In the 60 years Queen Elizabeth has been on the throne, Britain has seen a revolution in camp culture, and a very different kind of queen has ascended to rule Britannia's airwaves.
Well, you said it now.
In that time, a special band of hilarious,
What a gay day.
groundbreaking,
That's a beautiful
and utterly fabulous men
Outrageously gay.
have revolutionised the world of entertainment and our whole way of life.
I can't quite believe that they did that.
Filthy.
My press agent fell off a chair.
There's moments where I'm just so explosive, I want to slap myself.
Gay men are perfect for show business.
Each crowned queen in our story has blazed his own particular trail.
You know she's been showing me how to stick the pole up.
Some totally reinvented comedy,
A lovely tin of Fanny there.
some helped change our social history, and some just made our jaws drop to the floor. Every one of them has been touched by genius.
She can't help herself.
From those hiding in the 1950s closet,
Can't it just be our little secret?
to those bravely opening the door with a cheeky wink,
Fall down in the best possible taste.
and to those more recently who have made camp a part of our daily lives.
When you see glitter, it makes you want to smile.
When he puts on the wig, he's wicked.
God save our noble queens.
Oh, shut up, you silly old faggot.
In this show, we celebrate the reigning queens of camp, those fabulous men who rule popular culture and dominate the television we watch today.
I think it's in your contract now, you have to be gay to be on telly.
At Her Majesty's coronation, gay men were outcasts. But now these stars are out, proud, and we love them for it.
I love being gay. I absolutely love it.
Right up until the 1970s, television had an army of male entertainers camping it up whilst hiding in the closet.
What a gay day.
But the early 1980s brought in a new generation of activists determined to change the way gay men were perceived in Britain. Youth culture was already a heady mix of gender benders and political crusading pop stars. And, in the world of comedy, a new wave of angry young men declared war against the old-school entertainers. But one queen with biting wit, a filthy mind and razor-sharp delivery forged an unholy union of alternative risque comedy and old-school camp entertainment. Stand-up would never be the same again.
There wasn't a lot of it about when I started. Screaming, raving homosexuals.
This wasn't Larry Grayson in a polyester suit, how we'd seen comics before, camp stand-up comics before. This was something clearly much more aggressive. It was really kind of like a punk version of comedy, of a gay punk comedy.
Saturday Night Live became the showcase of the radical comedy scene, launching the careers of today's household names. And one of the most audacious new kids on the block was Julian Clary.
Fanny, take the weight off your slingbacks, please.
His image was definitely, I'm gay. This is it. You know, I'm telling the world, I'm completely proud of it. Every single element of my attire is playing on that fact. You know, and it was like, that was the thing, really. I guess it was like a kind of uniform to tell people, right, this is what I am, and this is what my comedy is going to be about, to a large extent. And so I think it was very effective from that point of view.
First time I would have saw Julian Clary would have been when I was quite young. And it would have been just he was so thin, so attractive, but just loads of makeup, the short hair, and I'm sure there was loads of like accessories and really loads of bright clothes and just going, oh, what is that? I just thinking he was just so amazing and so flamboyant. And then seeing him on television and going, oh my God, it was kind of a way where, oh, I'm not, like, should I be watching this? Is this right to watch it? God, he's so amazing, and he was just so quick and so funny, and people liked him.
He was very beautiful during as a youth. I mean, he really was, you know, that was also positive. He was quite exquisite looking. He was almost fawn-like. He had this filthy mouth. That to me, it was a hoot. And I think he softened. And then all of a sudden, he comes out with something. He was brittle camp comic, wasn't he? I've said it, camp comic. He was brittle, send the audience up, much adored, And he's funny. This is the thing.
When I was at school, the words head boy had quite a different meaning. But the more I did it, the more I thought, oh, they really quite like having gay sex demystified. And so I investigated that, and the more graphic I was, this became a sort of comic device for me. In fact, if you shouted out the words head boy during assembly, half the school would kneel.
I just thought it was fabulous because people didn't look at the PVC nurse's outfit he had on or the fact that he had his little fluffy dog with him or whatever, because the bigger picture was the fact that he was making people laugh and it was the humour and he was really confident with who he was, that people just accepted it.
Having made a name for himself on Saturday Night Live, Clary was given his very own show. And the boundary-pushing comic never missed an opportunity to slip in a lewd innuendo.
How kind, and thank you for your applause. There's still nothing I like more than a warm hand upon my entrance. I was always more interested in what was going on in the audience, so the idea of pulling people on stage and chatting to them or making them read a script or do something silly. Could we have our first 3 contestants now, please? Just comic improvising in a way, a bit of humiliation thrown in.
He would so blatantly rip apart the sort of straight heterosexual men that would come on and belittle them.
Hold yourself in a bit, Frank.
Thank you.
Ridicule what they were wearing. In such a... it was quite outrageous, and you hadn't really seen anything like that before.
In a way, he's a play on the old school kind of very camp entertainer, like the kind of Larry Grayson type of thing, but with much more sexual content thrown in, I think, which is the key with him.
It was that sort of juggling thing of passing the time and being very flippant and really filthy, actually. I've always quite liked doing that.
As Clary's popularity grew, he pushed the boundaries ever further, with outrageous innuendos delivered with a deadpan wit. Then, in 1993, he was invited to a live TV awards show, which distilled his graphic, daring and demystifying act into a few seconds.
To crown the king or queen of comedy, who better than the man never known to go for a single entendre when a good solid double would do? Please welcome Julian Clary.
It's a long old evening, as these award shows are, and Norman Lamont, Tory Chancellor of the Exchequer, was in the audience drinking champagne, and no one had commented on this. And I was on right at the end of the evening, and I thought of a joke involving Norman Lamont and a sexual act.
You could almost see the anticipation in the room as Julian glided onto the stage. This would be an awards ceremony like no other.
It's very nice of you to recreate hamster teeth for me here.
What began as backslapping awards ceremony banter was about to turn into one of the most outrageous TV moments of all time.
As a matter of fact, I've just been Norman Lamont. I knew the joke would be funny if you were doing a sort of a very extreme gay act with someone very incongruous.
I think it was just the shock of hearing the word. That sexual act, I don't think had ever been mentioned in polite company. You know, basically it was a thing that, you know, I mean, I didn't even heard of it at all.
I love things that make me gasp in any arena. But in comedy, someone who would say something that was so awful and, you know, bad and kind of shocking, I'm all for it.
But for the British public and the press, it was a step too far. As the darling of late-night TV, Clary had remained beneath the radar. But in the glare of mainstream ITV, he was exposed, and the press showed no mercy.
And unfortunately, Julian had to go to Australia on tour, so it looked like he'd left the country, and that wasn't the case at all. So he couldn't defend himself. So they really went to town on him.
He lost a little bit of the Daily Mail readership, who otherwise would have thought him a little bit wicked but very funny, and it just became, I don't know, I think it didn't work out too well for him, actually, even though personally I admire him greatly, and at the time I laughed like a drain.
Well, it'd be no big deal today. I think you could say that on breakfast television and perhaps get told off a bit.
But despite the backlash against the unpredictable Clary, the foundations of TV entertainment continued to be shaken as the 90s progressed by a platoon of camp legionnaires, and leading the march was a desperate scouse-wife.
She could bring camp humour and a gay sensibility into the mainstream in a way that hadn't really been before.
Drag has been around for centuries and is as popular today as it's always been. But one unique performer was going to take drag by the scruff of its wig and turn it on its head.
Louie Spence was like an old scrubber from Liverpool. I mean, Paul O'Grady grew on his own background, really, to create this larger-than-life woman.
She was a prostitute, drug-taking, liked to drink, and a shoplifter.
Louie Spence is the worst part of every auntie that you ever knew. He's wicked. He really is wicked, but he's funny.
You know, my auntie with the hands on the hips and the look and the drag on the fag and the... before she went into one. And my mother's dryness. You know, she's very dry, my mother. She'd wear you up and down and come out with a line. Now, you'll have to excuse the way I'm dressed because I've just come straight from work, but I thought to myself, well, if Cherry Blair can open the door in a dressing gown and be seen in a shell suit, I can wear a jacket that's 4 years old.
Lily, I was aware of for years at the Vauxhall Tavern, and you would go along there just to hear her ranting and raving and attacking people.
I was working in a pub called the Elephant and Castle behind the bar. It was a notoriously rough pub, full of rent boys again, another dive. A friend of mine was compering, and he was great, and he stopped doing it, and he got a succession of various awful, tacky drag acts who were comparing. And I said, I could do better than that. And I got up and started, and I thought, oh. And by the end of the night, you know, when they were tearing the tiles off the roof, going, where the hell does this come from? Because I didn't know where it came from. It just came out.
You've got to have such quick wit. You've got to, you know, there isn't a moment to think. And, you know, Louie Spence was the master of that.
I wasn't serious. I was a social worker. I was working in social services. I was wiping arses by day and dressing up as one of my clients of a night. You know, so it was a fun time.
Traditional drag had been unthreatening and mainstream, but now a 6-foot mouthy scouser in a blonde wig was to tempt the nation out of bed on breakfast TV.
Well, I think The Big Breakfast suited Louie Spence because, you know, it was Channel 4's harder-edged, funnier spin on a breakfast show.
And I'm Louie Spence and I'm doing community service for the next 4 weeks.
I think Louie Spence fitted in because she was a kind of aggressive, harsh, scouse stereotype of a kind of battle axe woman. And it just fitted in really well with the whole tone of The Big Breakfast, which was edgy, unpredictable, quite wild sometimes, and she was perfect for that.
You know, there's a lot of anarchy in gay comedians. You've got to be. Lily was very anarchic, you know what I mean? You've got a prostitute, basically, on telly.
I guess a lot of drag acts are kind of, you know, play on being blousy and glamorous, egotistical, whereas Louie Spence is a completely kind of working class, unglamorous, scouse figure.
It's an act, you know what I mean? It's just an act, that's it. I never ever shaved anything or plucked anything because you've got to live a normal life. Nothing, I can tell you this now, and I've always wanted to say this, was ever tucked anywhere, believe you me.
Even Auntie wanted a piece of Lily on their most popular game show, Blankety Blank.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Louie Spence.
At last, Britain had an openly gay performer on primetime television. Drag had gone truly mainstream. A dirty talking diva had filled the shoes of Terry Wogan and Les Dawson, and the public didn't bat an eyelid.
With Blankety Blank, there was, you know, here was Louie Spence presenting this really mainstream show, and she could bring camp humour and a gay sensibility into the mainstream in a way that hadn't really been before.
Nothing was ever planned. This was it. You say, just pop out. I mean, you can't plan a show like Blankety Blank because you're having conversations with people. You know, it's just so you have to really take the break off and see where it goes.
And the very character that Louie Spence had meant she could get away with the most outrageous put-downs.
You're a big fan of Denise Van Houten, aren't you?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I'll tell her this because I'm bleaching a moustache for her tomorrow.
I think somehow there's like a Trojan horse effect, really, with someone like Louie Spence because it's bringing this gay sensibility into the mainstream, but through a disguise of a man dressed as a woman. So it brings something. It presents it in a more palatable way for the mainstream, I think.
Lily Savage is now retired, but her creator, Paul O'Grady, has become one of our most loved national treasures. With attitudes towards gay culture finally beginning to turn, one of the campest, outest queens landed on our screens.
Flight attendants are predominantly quite camp. In whichever way you think of camp, they usually fit the bill.
I was a flight attendant for 4 years. That is a perfect industry for gay men.
Stay! My partner works for British Airways, and all those characters they created, I've seen them all the time. And in fact, when you ever get on an aeroplane, I mean, it's full of queens. I mean, they're all there, and it's exactly like the high life. It's hysterical. And I think that, in a way, if the flights weren't flown by homosexuals, I think we'd be in a disaster zone, because I think you have to have that sense of humour.
And, you know, when someone comes up to you and goes, "Can we get you some olives?" Or, you know, "Will you be joining us for a light snack?" Things like that. You know, that just goes into an area of camp, that when you begin to refer to someone who's standing in front of you as "we," or when you have to say "hot towel" to anyone, you know, and use little tongs. When anyone ever says "chicken or beef," I fall on the floor.
If I had £1 for every paper towel I'd fished through that chemical lavy, I would be a rich man.
You'd be pretty stinky, but...
I think there's a bit of that Oscar Wilde quote, "We're all in the gutter, but some of us looking at the stars." Certainly Sebastian, the character I played, was definitely looking at the stars.
In The High Life, Alan Cummings' Sebastian wore his sexuality firmly on his airline jacket sleeve.
Morning, boys.
Morning, Miss Spurtle.
And unlike other sitcom characters, he made no concessions to anyone.
How is your arse for love bites?
The High Life's subversion of stereotypes and sense of fun chimed with a new gay pride. By the mid-90s, British films were featuring gay couples, a new gay and lesbian show on the BBC, and the new Labour government was set to lower the age of gay sex to 16 and introduce civil partnerships for same-sex couples. And riding this new wave of equality was our next queen, the brazen and unabashed Tom from Gimme, Gimme, Gimme.
I was getting lots of approaches at the time about doing sitcoms. And usually it was quite mundane things like, "Would you be interested in doing a sitcom set in a bank?" And then my agent phoned up and said, "Oh, there's this producer wants to do a sitcom with you." When I heard the idea, I thought, "Oh yeah, no, I can do that, because I can empathise with that, and it excites me, and I think I've got funny things to say about that."
Since when has my hair been brown? Oh no, it's Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Chronicling the less than fabulous lives of Linda LaHughes and would-be actor Tom Farrell, Gimme, Gimme, Gimme was a camp, kitsch, over-the-top riot that revelled in deliberate bad taste.
The character was supposed to be unhappy about everything in his life because nothing ever worked for him. But the one thing that he never really gave a lot of thought to was the fact that he was gay.
He shagged, and he got shags, and he woke up with strange men in his bed and couldn't remember getting them home, but he had sex. And so the asexuality of the camp characters in the past was certainly erased with Tom.
Being gay was not his issue. He was stunned when people would bring it up, because he'd be like, "What? That's not... I want to be an actor. I want to... have a relationship. I want to have lots of friends. I want to be popular." So being gay, that was the one thing he was perfectly happy about.
But the gay community weren't impressed by Tom's over-the-top camp mannerisms, which was seen as a throwback to the stereotypes of old.
Tom in Gimme, Gimme, Gimme was quite a divisive character at the time, I remember, because he was so camp and outrageous, and I think some people felt at the time that this wasn't the way we want to be represented as gay people, this was a throwback.
But Tom's critics were missing the point. He was deliberately written that way.
He's not your archetypal gay man, and he is a stereotype. He is a cartoon character. He's not meant to be a role model. I think if that was my only role model, I'd probably commit suicide. He's vile and vitriolic, and you just wouldn't want to go near him. So in that way, there was quite a backlash against the portrayal of the character, by people who don't like to see any campery whatsoever.
And anyone who'd looked to Tom as a role model is an idiot. you know. And he wasn't supposed to be good-looking. He wasn't supposed to be handsome or hunky in any way. He was supposed to be a total loser.
Outrageous and openly gay characters were now assimilated into the cultural mainstream. But somewhere just over the rainbow, a dramatic depiction of gay life was about to set the cat amongst the pigeons again. Those of a sensitive disposition look away now. As the millennium loomed in Britain, gay men were finally set on a legal par with heterosexuals, with the equalising of the age of consent to 16. And with this long overdue law approaching, Russell T Davies broke new ground with a series featuring gay teenage sex, which had everyone's jaws dropping.
You can't really underestimate how groundbreaking Queer as Folk was. I mean, mainstream drama, it was watched by millions of people, and it really represented gay men in a way in drama that you'd never seen before on British television.
Queer as Folk making it onto the screens was a massively liberating time for British television. The fact that, you know, there was nothing coy about this. They weren't pulling away from anything. They weren't pulling away from the reality of what goes on. I don't think people are taking that risk even now with drama. I think, if anything, we've gone backwards. I think this was like a remarkable time of freedom. I wonder now whether you would even get this show onto the television.
When we were filming it, some of it were like, somebody's not going to show this. They're not going to show... I mean, the content of it now, some of it still remains, I can't quite believe that they did that.
Good God, I mean, quite like, that made me blush. Oh, my Lord. And there were lots of guys who went, we're not like that. Look in the mirror, mate. Look in the mirror. I don't know what cloistered world you live in your imagination, but I could go out and pick you 1,000 characters who were in Queer as Folk.
The settings, I remember, were fabulous, so you just wanted to look at the soft furnishings sometimes. But it was mainly, it was just brilliantly written, and would have watched it anyway, you know, not just the gay thing.
Queer as Folk was a game changer. It revolutionised drama. For the first time, we weren't just seeing issue-based gay characters, but a whole community literally grabbing life by the balls.
Up until Queer as Folk came along, I think gay men in drama on TV and film had always been dealt with in quite an earnest way, quite a kind of self-consciously serious way.
Gay people on television were always victims. There was always an HIV storyline, or there was always a, you know, homophobic abuse storyline. Somebody was always being beaten, or, you know, all those things. Queer as Folk wasn't that. It changed the way gay people are presented on television, the way they're portrayed. It put gay characters at the heart of storylines. It wasn't like we were saying this is how every gay person that's, you know, living on your street is. But there were types.
It all helped to normalise, really, what gay people were, and realise the differences weren't as great as people thought, and they were your friends, your brothers, your neighbours.
What Queer as Folk did was forced people watching television drama, you know what, there's more than one way to love.
And just up the road from the cobbles of Manchester's Canal Street, Anthony Cotton was about to take the Queer as Folk inspiration to the most famous street on television. Coronation Street had never featured an openly gay character, despite running for over 40 years and having an avowedly camp sensibility. Cue Sean Tully.
He's a gay man who works in his local factory. He's got a gob on him. He's quite camp. I think Sean's an archetypal Corrie character.
Yeah, you flame-haired pocket rocket. Well, I suppose his success lies in the fact that within the show, he's an entertaining member of the community. He's somebody that, you know, old ladies say to me, oh, I'd love to have a Sean. I'd love to live next door to Sean. That's the real success. Sean has just had little stories, whether he's been off spying on Kirk with Fizz and a giant pink poodle, or he's fallen in love with the vet, so keeps him taking everybody's animals in from Weatherfield just so he can go into the vets, and travelled on 2 bendy buses to get there, you know, or he's helping Sunita with a Hindu Hendu.
Back in 1987, when EastEnders first took the bold step to feature an openly gay couple kissing, Middle England got into a right old froth about it.
The last straw is seeing 2 grown men kissing on our television sets. I really think it's just gone too far, and I'm wondering whether children are now beginning to think all this sort of thing is the norm.
I can't tell you.
But 20 years later, when Sean Tully passionately kissed a man on Corrie, the nation barely blinked.
I think it is important to have gay characters in continuing dramas like Coronation Street and EastEnders because gay people exist, so they should exist in those programmes. And that's why I think it's really important that a character like Sean is seen on a programme like that and seen in the workplace and seen, you know, having relationship dramas and having a laugh and having a cry and just leading a normal life because that's what real life is about.
Lad's night out. He's the first one to come.
Easy for me. Are you men at arms?
With Queens already reigning in the world of sitcoms, soaps and drama, camp has now taken over our Saturday nights too, conquering our talent shows.
Action.
All it seems to take to be a star these days is for someone to walk into a studio, sing a song and become the nation's darling in 3 minutes.
I'm Johnny Robinson, I'm 45 years old, I'm from Harrow in London. I was frightened about doing it, just in case the way the public would perceive me. Obviously, you determine the word camp, and people would say I'm camp, but I can't see that because, to me, I'm just myself. It's so good because it's sort of like, it's got all of elements of camp, glitter, makeup, costumes, theatre, arts, creative and fun, all mixed in and condensed into one big show and big production.
All the singing and the tears and the backstories and the judges fighting, and it's all high drama with a big D. It's all like musical theatre, that's what it is, which is the gayest of all gay expressions ever.
I think the thing is, with someone like Johnny Robinson, who appeared on X Factor, is that he comes on to the screen and, you know, he's this kind of very thin camp man and he's got this falsetto voice. You know, the nation warmed to him and they loved him. And, you know, in my heart, I just thought, God, you know, for the last 40 years, there's been people like Johnny playing in Northern working men's clubs. You know, sometimes dressed up as women. But, you know, that is so British. You know, that is entertainment.
But since after doing the X Factor, I never felt so much love in my entire life from the public.
Johnny's unique brand of 21st century high camp took him all the way to week 5 of the finals.
The X Factor's always embraced very camp acts, you know, as soon as it arrived. But I think probably in the person of Johnny Robinson, it kind of reached its peak with him singing that Darkness song with his brilliantly high-pitched voice. So Johnny had kind of reached their peak of campness. The X Factor embraces that world in a spectacularly entertaining way. It's part of the way in which it's so entertaining is how camp the X Factor can be.
And if anyone is still in doubt as to the triumph of camp, take a look at the fruity shenanigans over on Britain's Got Talent. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Show Bears. And as if the Show Bears' performance isn't enough, the judging becomes a veritable camp fest.
Want to join and sing that song with you?
1 part Hindu, 2 parts Glee, all topped off by what could be an award-winning flotilla at Gay Pride.
Camp today occurs in a much more knowing, almost industrially produced way in all sorts of entertainment.
I think Britain's Got Talent probably is about as camp as you can get on television without having a pink television screen.
Without camp, there would be no prime-time television. I think it's very important, and I think most of the population love it.
It's not just the attribute of the particular performer, the particular act. It's part of the production, part of the mainstream of the production values, the thinking. And that's the difference. It's not just recording it, it's being it.
The message is clear. Gay or straight, we're all sailor men aboard the good ship Camp, which dominates mainstream TV entertainment. And And in an age where ordinary members of the great British public are beamed straight into our living rooms via reality TV, queens reign, becoming the stars of tomorrow and permeating our daily lives.
On the 14th of February 2001, I sat down with some Bacardi Breezers, pineapple, and I filled in the application form. I told them on the form I was out and I was openly gay, which was a lie, because I wasn't. And then when it came to the crunch, I had to tell my family, and I didn't tell them I got my sister too. I was too afraid. And she told them, and then I spoke to my mum on the Wednesday, and she asked me, was I just trying to be fashionable?
Brian took to the real-life environment of Big Brother with aplomb, and in turn, the nation took him to their hearts.
Now, I don't think I'm that effeminate as I do that. So I would say I'm camp in a humorous way, as in he's behind you. In a panto camp. I'm panto camp, yeah.
I won!
Brian was fantastically queeny, and the TV-watching nation was mesmerised by him. Not because he was gay, but because of who he was.
The thing about on Big Brother people always love is when they're themselves. That's the cliche of the show. I'm just going to be myself. And I think in Brian's case it was true. I think he is like that, and he was like that, and that's why he won.
He was very likeable, Brian. That's the other thing. He didn't win again because of his sexuality. He won because he was the likeable one and the one who handled it the best.
It was like the public were voting for an openly gay man to win. This wasn't a character, it wasn't a construction, this was a real person. And I think that showed a sort of change in attitudes and an acceptance that you hadn't really maybe seen before.
Brian Dowling's journey from camp contestant to TV host shows the power of reality TV to bring those once marginalised into the mainstream fold. But nothing prepared the nation for the next man to burst onto our TV screens, a one-man reinvention of all things camp.
Hi. We've had a call about a guy up on the roof, red T-shirt, short hair, a bit muscly. Do you know anything about it?
I've not seen anything of you.
Reality TV has seeped into every area of our lives. Point a camera into a dance studio and the result is usually dull. But you put this man on TV, a hit show, and the new Queen of Camp is born.
Welcome to Pineapple Dance Studios. I love being gay. I love being gay. I absolutely love it. Get off me! I wouldn't want to be straight. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I just wouldn't. I love my life and I always have.
In the kingdom of Pineapple Studios, Louie was the undisputed queen, the pure distillation of camp in the 21st century.
He definitely seems to be the latest in a long line of kind of very camp, over-the-top men in show business.
He's quite outrageous, Louie. Yeah, he's flamboyant. He's a flamboyant, outrageous entertainer and a bloody good dancer. Seriously. I mean, a really good dancer, Louie. People think, oh, he's come from nowhere. He's just a screaming queen in the back of Pineapple. He's a highly professional and highly skilled dancer and singer in many, many great West End shows.
What is camp? Me!
The hyper-excesses of Louie may well be the culmination of every camp entertainer there's ever been. But not everyone thinks that's a good thing.
The worst thing they could do for the gay community was turn a camera on that bitch, because now everyone expects us to behave that way.
I'm going to look fresh, it's frightening.
It just set the gay community back about 5,000 years. It's like a woman staying at home saying, well, my man told me to be this way, and I'm the lady, so I'm married, and that's what It was like that.
The gay community is very diverse. So for every, man pretending to be, a businessman in his suit and I'm going off to the office, there's somebody down the road in a pair of Bermuda shorts screaming their tits off and having a ball.
Well, I can't really decide whether Louie Spence is a good thing for camp or a bad thing, because he's so ludicrously over the top. You'd almost think he was a character out of a Little Britain sketch or out of a comedy show rather than a real person. But he actually is like that.
If you're gay, it doesn't matter what kind of gay you are, you should be celebrated. And I don't think it's, especially for any people in the gay community, to start telling gay people how they should be.
Not all these representations are perfect. People might have problems with them. I think some people are too camp, whatever. But it's such a different ballpark to what it was 10, 20 years ago. And I think that visibility across the board in itself has made a huge difference.
Louie's exaggerated, overblown camp fits in perfectly with Britain's long-standing love affair with unbridled flamboyance. His unexpected popularity meant one thing: the public loves a queen, and the more outrageous, the better. But one area of popular television still resisted the temptations of the glorious queens. The jewel in the crown of TV entertainment is the chat show, and over the last 10 years, gay men have seized this territory.
It's in your contract now, you have to be gay to be on telly. You know what I mean? Oh, he's gay, fabulous, give him a chat show. You know how gobby they are.
The chat show is one of the cornerstone entertainment shows on any channel, and in the past they've often been more high-minded than high camp. But as the times have changed, so has the chat show, becoming a home for comedians of all stripes, from Clive Anderson to Frank Skinner. And with the chat show becoming as much about the host as the guests, it soon became apparent that it suited those infused with a camp sensibility. Something quickly understood by Jonathan Ross, whose house band, 4 puffs and a piano, became a highlight of Friday nights. But somehow, something was still missing. And if proof were needed that camp and gossip go together like a whistle and feather boa, Graham Norton reigns supreme on the BBC's premier chat show. Today's chat shows are ruled by queens. Cue the next monarch of late-night chat, Alan Carr.
It's David Williams! Oh, look at you! Well, because I'm married now.
When it's Jonathan Ross, I mean, I love Jonathan, but when it's Jonathan Ross famously getting into trouble over flirting too much with his guests, for example, his female guests, you know, and I've always thought, well, that's just his persona and that's fine. But I guess the likes of Graham Norton and Alan Carr can be more flirtatious with whoever the hell they want and talk about whatever they want with these people. I mean, Alan will ask his celebrity guests anything and everything.
Well, they make great chat show hosts because they love a gossip. They love a good gossip.
It's very chameleon-like, sort of, if you look at all the gay men who are doing chat shows. You know, they can do various things. You know, we're very adaptable. We can turn our hand to anything.
But now you don't expect your camp men to wear dresses and tiaras. You like them to wear suits and ties and crack jokes. So there they are in key positions on the schedules, and God bless them all.
You know, if Graham Norton and Alan Carr, they can get out information from people by being funny and by being wicked. I think that the idea is fun, is comedy.
I'll do one too. Here we go. There we go.
We now live in a world where television is like a latter-day Wildian camp salon.
And the winner is Alan Carr, Cheltenham.
Read this great interview with Alan Carr about them asking him, the journalist asking him, it's like, you know, have you always been camp? He's going, I've always been like this.
I weren't expecting this. I wasn't. Thank you so much.
And when I look at him, I think, yeah, I can imagine you have always been like that. And so, and he, of course, he uses it, he hammers it up. That's now his career, that's who he is. But he can actually get away with now saying that he also has a partner. He lives with his boyfriend. He can get away with actually being gay.
Such marvellous Friday night froth and frippery has led to the unprecedented situation where an entire generation of Brits positively embrace an openly gay man on their TV screens.
I think it's great and very radical that chat show hosts these days are gay and out, like Graham Norton and Alan Carr, because it puts that message out there that here's, again, the smartest guy in the room. He's leading the ship. He's sailing this one, and he's the gay one. And he's going to tell you all what's going to happen, and you're going to follow along. And I think, again, people are more comfortable with gay people the more they see of us.
It's a really great thing that these openly gay, but also with a kind of gay sensibility in their humour, are very much part of the British mainstream television world.
You almost think, in the future, all chat show hosts should be gay. And you think, well, maybe they should. Maybe that's the best way to do it. because it's popular. People like it.
I think it's, you know, it's in your contract now. You have to be gay to be on telly. There's so many gay performers. Nobody's bothered. That's what I personally think anyway. You know, it's no big deal. I mean, years ago, it was a huge shock. Well, it was ruination of a career and a life. You know, banishment, you'd never work again. But now it's sort of actively encouraged, I seem to feel. You know what I mean? Oh, he's gay, fabulous, give him a chat show. You know how gobby they are.
Graham Norton can be a hugely successful TV presenter and radio presenter, but doesn't hide the fact that he's a gay man. You know, doesn't shove it down your throat at the same time. That is certainly different from when I was a kid.
I think that's one type of gay man, Alan Carr and Graham Norton. It's the camp, sort of flippant, sort of smart, funny, clever guy. There's other forms of gay men. I'd love to see them shown on TV. I think we're lacking a bit of that, but I think we've got this, and that's great for now. And maybe that'll lead to something else, more of a diversity of the gay community being expressed on TV. That's why it's important too, right?
Nowadays, I want to be Alan Carr. I want to be Alan Carr, and I will be Alan Carr. That's the dream now, is to be. I almost want to wear glasses and just go like that. I just want it. I just want to be Alan Carr.
We're out to conquer the world. Sorry, that slipped out. Yes, we're after your husbands and your children. We will dominate.
Over the last 60 years, the cultural landscape of Britain has changed enormously. For our queens, it's been a journey from hiding in the closet to loud, proud, outrageous showing off.
Look here.
Today, gay men can be as flamboyant and extravagant as they like, have legal rights, enter into civil partnerships, and have children.
I haven't done this since I was in the army.
Great Britain has come a long way since the Queen's coronation year, and today there's no escaping the sequined footprint of camp in all areas of British public life.
Things are certainly different from when I was growing up, when, you know, there'd be camp people on telly.
Oh, no, don't be like that.
Of course, everybody knew they were gay, but whether they used that word, I don't know.
Oh, gosh, things have changed. I mean, you wouldn't believe all the things that people had to do to hide their sexuality. And I think it's come on leaps and bounds now.
You're neither one thing nor the other. I don't know what he meant by that.
I can't imagine what my life would have been like then. Well, I wouldn't have had any work, would I? I'd have been run out of town for my act. So I guess we're all, you know, of our time.
When you look back at people over the years that were very, very camp and had to hide their sexuality, you go, but why? It was so obvious. But back then it wasn't obvious. Camp was just funny. Camp didn't necessarily equal you like men on top of you naked. Whereas now it kind of does. But I think thanks to those people who were gay and out and proud that have pushed the boundaries, so I actually can go on television and be accepted. And I can go out and I can be in a relationship and go into my church in Ireland and it's accepted. You know, I think we owe a lot to those people.
Everything's changed, so and changed for the better as well. I'd like to think, I really would like to think, we're all changing for the better, but we're still going to get you.
This time next week, we begin a breathtaking new series taking a bird's-eye view of our countryside and our cities. Britain and Ireland from the Sky begins next Thursday night at 8 here on Sky Atlantic. Tonight, Trevor Eve and Geraldine James find a TV drama taking over their lives. Playhouse presents The Other Woman, brand new, next on Sky Arts 1 HD.